Hello and a very warm welcome to today's sharedserviceslink.com webinar, which I'm very pleased to say is being sponsored by Nimbus. Today we're looking at 5 ways to get people engaged in process. So I extend to you a very warm welcome indeed. My name is Susie West. I'm the founder and CEO at sharedserviceslink.com. And presenting today is Nigel Warren, Head of Marketing at Nimbus. Let's have a look at the agenda for the next 16 minutes. I'm going to touch briefly on how the mechanics of our questioning is going to work, and then just a little bit of context as to why we're having this webinar today, and then I'll be handing straight over to Nigel. We'll be getting into the content, and then we'll take your questions in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. So how questions work, it's very straightforward. You've got a panel, and you can see here it's got a little red box around it. All you need to do is drop your question into that field and send that through to me. Please try and send it to me sooner rather than later. The earlier I get your question, the more likely it is to be asked. And make sure you stay on the line for the last 10 minutes of the webinar. So let's just set the scene here. Most of you in the world of finance shared services and just shared services generally, you'll be very appreciative of the fact that a word is being repeated again and again in our world, which is the word of collaboration. Collaboration is a priority for finance shared services in particular, and one reason for that is that there is a huge recognition that the performance in procurement and performance in accounts payable, they're reliant on each other working together, and the gains that can be done in collaboration are so much greater than the gains that can be won when working independently. So collaboration is absolutely key, and for this to really be achieved, this true nature of collaboration, organizations are looking to manage end-to-end processes. From the beginning of a transaction, the birth of that transaction, if you will, right through to the, if you will, the death of that transaction, but the end point of that transaction. So end-to-end processing is key. So this is really putting a lot of organizations' attention onto their internal processes and managing them much more effectively. And the question really is, how can you manage and optimize the process to get the best end result? Which obviously you want the best end result as a result of managing your process in an optimum way. And a critical success factor is, of course, to have the most optimum engagement. So this is really what we're focusing on today. And now I'd like to introduce Nigel for the presentation. Over to you, please, Nigel.
Thank you very much, Susie, and thank you, everybody, for joining this webinar, which I hope you find both enjoyable and informative. So to manage your expectations, I don't just intend to pose 5 ways or rules for engaging people in process. I intend to bring that to life with a demonstration of what our customers are actually doing with the software, TIBCO Nimbus Control, and also to introduce a detailed case study from one of our customers, BAE Systems, which is all about their finance transformation program. But first of all, I want to sort of set the scene, if you like. And if we think about the goal of any shared service or global business services program, surely it has 3 goals: to reduce costs through efficiency, to improve quality, which may be a question of knowledgeable people getting things right first time, and delivering excellence in terms of throughput and accuracy, data, and so on. And as a consequence of that, of course, raising customer satisfaction. Now, to get here requires process improvement. And as anyone should know, improvement is kind of hard to achieve unless there's a common way of working already in place. So that's why these types of projects always start, I think, with the standardization of processes. If you've got lots of variation for how a service gets delivered, it's very hard for your customers to access that service in a consistent way. And of course, it's very difficult for shared service staff to execute flawlessly. So the need for standardization is quite obvious. Trying to improve something which is done umpteen different ways is, I would say, a recipe for disaster and pretty difficult to achieve. But the thing is, of course, that, I've just been talking about transformation, and the truth is that shared services optimization isn't a one-time transition. It's so important to bake in continuous improvement to your ways of working to optimize the service delivery over time. So continuous improvement, that sometimes kind of amuses me, because the idea that you continuously improve or continuously tinker with processes and so on is perhaps quite dangerous. If you do this badly, the reaction from your customers is going to be, oh goodness me, yet another blinking change. Will these people ever stop changing stuff? According to IBM's recent CFO survey, only about 50% of CFOs think their organizations are tackling this kind of continuous improvement well. So it would appear that there are challenges afoot. And I think if we look at change management, which really I think one of the sort of key capabilities for continuous improvement, 59% of organizations say they wished they had invested more in change management. Well, that language actually frightens me a little bit, because it's the past tense. It implies that people who were responding to this survey from Deloitte were really thinking in a sort of backward sense. They were, wishing, oh God, wouldn't it be good if we'd invested more back then? But are they really thinking about the critical importance of continuing to invest in change management to facilitate long-term continuous improvement? So, the need for this capability of agile change and continuous improvement, I think, is important, because these figures, taken actually from the same survey from Deloitte last year, suggest that comparatively few shared service organizations believe that they're delivering what they call significant positive impact, as indicated in green here. Amber is some positive impact, by the way, but not significant, and red, of course, is no positive impact or whatsoever. Now, clearly, the survey covers hundreds of shared service organizations who are at all different stages of maturity. Some have only just started, so let's not criticize them for being still red. That's they're only just starting. But some of these shared service the respondents to the survey have been going for years. So I wonder whether some of them are actually struggling to get out of this sort of amber zone rather, to get into what would be termed significant positive impact. I think that leads us to our first poll question, Susie.
Thank you very much, Nigel. So yes, let's get an idea as to the maturity of your shared services organisation today. So coming up on your screen, please, if you could tick the box most appropriate to you. How mature is your shared services organisation? You still in the state of decentralisation? Are you setting up or going live with your shared services? Are you stabilising your shared services post go live, or are you in the continuous improvement stage, or maybe some other stage? If you can tick the box most appropriate to your own situation. We do like to get these numbers up to about 70% participation. So if you haven't yet responded, please take a moment just to tick the box most appropriate to you. We're at about 76%. So we're going to be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Great, thank you. We're at 80% participation there, so thank you very much. Coming up on your screen are the results. And you can see that we've got kind of 2 winners, if you will. Quite a large number of you are in the stabilization stage of your shared services, and the largest group amongst you are in the continuous improvement stage. Interesting results. Back to you, please, Nigel.
Yes, I think the only judgment I'd take from this survey is it gives me, of course, a challenge to try and please all of the audience who are at different stages. So I'll have to be perhaps a little bit broad in what I have to say. That's fine. So if we move on, I think the first 5 minutes has established clearly that processes are at the heart of shared services, and this science of business process management is therefore something that we need to understand. So we have a definition on the screen of business process management as a management discipline which treats business processes as assets. Let's simplify that, just get rid of a bit of the verbiage there. So we need to treat business processes as assets. What does that feel like? What would that be like? They need to be cared for, they need to be understood, they need to be improved. I think I'm starting to talk about processes like I might do about my children. But the question is, how are you looking after them? How are you looking after your assets? For many organizations, BPM can be, I think, mistakenly seen as an IT discipline. Those three letters, BPM, are often just shorthand to mean a category of software that's to do with workflow automation. And I think it's really important to retain that understanding that business process management is about managing your business processes, not necessarily automating a whole load of stuff. Okay, so I think there are several potential pitfalls of this risk that BPM is seen as an IT discipline. I'm just going to quickly visit a few of those. First of those is not thinking about the audience. Who needs to understand process content in your organization? Well, that's perhaps a rhetorical question. There's a big list of the obvious candidates, a lot of sort of IT roles, but process owners, line managers, business end users. Obviously, the answer to this question is all these people need to understand process. And obviously, if we rank these up, there's probably 3, 4, or 5 enterprise architects in your company, and perhaps tens of thousands of ordinary employees. So where should the balance lie when we're thinking about the audience? So I've got a couple of pictures to show you of how some people are documenting their processes. And this is an example from a famous ERP company, and it's actually taken from the in-house style guide for the process orders that create process content within that organization. And what's a little bit worrying about this is the advice they are providing in their style guide is that we will have 5 regimented and consistent levels of process. And would you believe it, we'll document each of those levels differently. Now, if you think about it, I mean, that's crazy. If you want to communicate process to tens of thousands of employees, you do it this way. You're clearly not thinking about that. You would need to train these people to a ridiculous level for them to understand, oh, right, so I'm on level 1, that's why the diagram looks like this. Let me try and remember what the symbols mean. Oh dear, I've drilled down to a deeper level, and now the process looks completely different. What do all these different shapes and colors mean? So, I know plenty of customers that have tried to take this approach, and as one of them put it to me, we've got lots of process content, Nigel. The trouble is, our users are allergic to it. So here's another example which often rears its head, and that's BPMN. That's the standard notation used for process automation and workflow products. Now, if your IT department is invested in tools for the purposes of process automation, there is a risk that they think this is the best way to document processes and impose that on the business. Now, I don't know about you, but we're here today to discuss about engagement. Does this diagram engage you? To me, it's a worrying diagram. Now, don't get me wrong, it sounds like I'm having a poke at automation vendors. That's not my intent, but I am here today to talk about engaging the wider business in process content. So what we can see here is another common issue that we face at organizations, the use of huge swim lane diagrams. Now, let's put a PC monitor on here. How much of this swim lane diagram can you see? Not very much. So for an ordinary end user, they're begging, they're asking themselves the question, do I read this from top to bottom, or should I be reading it from left to right? Panning and zooming around huge diagrams like this is a huge barrier for ordinary end users to follow a process and understand what it is that it means. Another challenge for many organizations is outdated methods of process capture and review. Now, here's an example, a process-based workshop that covers the walls in flip charts and post-it notes is actually, I have to say, very effective. It engages the participants. It's very democratic, but the trouble is it's very slow and very costly. Getting people to travel to a meeting center from quite typically, multiple continents is very expensive. And stories abound of the meeting is over. We try to take this poster, the posters off the wall, and lo and behold, we find there's a few post-it notes that have fallen on the floor. Nobody can agree where they should be stuck back on. Then, of course, people go back to their places of work, and some poor person is left with the challenge of trying to transpose this content into computerized format so that it can be looked at online. I mean, by the time that happens, mistakes may have been made, and the participants may well not recognize what they're shown as an end result. So not only slow, but pretty ineffective. Another challenge is lack of governance. And by governance, I mean the version control, the review, the approval of process content, which I think is critical. If it's not regularly reviewed and approved, it's going to contain errors, and that will cause it to fall into disrepute. The content will not be trusted. Well, here's a business blueprint design document that one of our clients was asked to sign off by their systems integrator in order to start the configuration of a new version of SAP. It had taken the system integrator several weeks to compile this, over 200,000 euros of consulting, not to mention, of course, lots of customer time invested in it. But the CIO refused to sign this off in the end because he wasn't confident that the business requirements had been properly understood. Certainly when he came to this document, he decided that, in his own words, it would have been a leap of faith to sign this and to actually start the SAP configuration. So they actually stopped and remapped their processes with Nimbus before continuing. So for this client, just the exercise of reviewing and approving a paper-based document like this proved to be a big barrier to engagement. Now, the last challenge I'm going to talk about is failing to support collaboration. And Susie, in your introduction, thank you for those words. They're absolutely on the button. Failing to support collaboration is a potential real problem. So who are the stakeholders in your organization that need to create and maintain process content? Just within the shared service center itself, and you may be delivering multiple services, you're going to have process owners, compliance specialists, perhaps you've got some Lean or Six Sigma people in your team as well, quality managers, IT specialists, the SAP team, perhaps risk officers. It depends on how highly regulated your business is, but a lot of our clients are in highly regulated industries like financial services and pharmaceutical, for example. So you need to get all of these people collaborating, and for that you need a single source of the truth. If they're not all looking at one version of the process content, any collaboration is really an exercise in risk. So one version of the truth, and then we need to support collaboration that makes it easy to discuss and to collaborate and to communicate. Easier to agree, easier to improve, easier to sign off and keep up to date with periodic reviews. So that's, I think, what it is that we seek to enable with Nimbus Control and a little bit more beyond. This sort of stuff is actually very difficult to achieve if you're just storing flat files like Visio on the file system. So in terms of process engagement, though, the challenge is much wider. There's something missing on this diagram, and that is the need, once this information exists, to deploy this content to all of the people that need to follow the process, the employees. Done effectively, this is a goldmine for every employee. It's a single source of the truth where everyone can come to understand how the organization operates. What are the compliance obligations that they have to satisfy? What are the best practices? And also to be able to look at performance and see, okay, this is how things are actually performing. If we get this, if we do this effectively, it becomes the easiest place to understand how to perform your role. So this is what we call the Intelligent Operations Manual, and that's what what employees want, in my view, is not to be sort of drowned in all the content but to to have personalized delivery of the content that's relevant for their role, to avoid information overload. And of course, they want to be informed when process content that's relevant to their role changes, and they want to be able to communicate to, for example, pass feedback, ask questions, make suggestions for improvement, and get to hear, what happened to that improvement suggestion. So that sort of summarizes the challenges as I see it. Susie, I think we have another poll question.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Yes, we've got 2 back-to-back polls, so if you could please respond as much as you did in the first poll, that would be great. See if we can get 80% participation. Which process challenges are of most concern to you today? And you've got up to 3 options here, so please tick the 3 that are most appropriate to you. Processes are not easily referenced or understood by everyone. Collaboration for review and improvement is ineffective. People don't trust that the content is up to date. Process performance lacks transparency. There's a disconnect between IT's view of the process and the business's view of the process. So we're at about 48% of you responding. Let's just see if we can get up to 80%, at the very least north of 70%, so we can get some meaningful information out of asking this poll. So just to recap, which process challenges are of most concern to you? Please tick the 3 that resonate with you the most. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Good, we're at 79% there, so thank you very much for participating. Let's have a look at the results coming up on the screen now. So a very clear winner there, 64%. Processes are not easily referenced or understood by everyone. And 16% coming in at people don't trust that the content is up to date. I'm sure Nigel's got a few comments to make, but just before he does make some comments, I'm going to go straight on, please, to the second poll in this little poll series. So coming up on your screen now. When you roll out a process change, what content do you have to update? And again, feel free to tick as many of the boxes that are applicable. Is it process diagrams, training content, typically in PowerPoint, PDFs, KPIs and dashboards, intranet pages? When you roll out a process change, what content do you have to update? Process diagrams, training content, typically PowerPoint, PDFs, KPIs and or dashboards, intranet pages. Again, there should be multiple choice for you. So tick the box most appropriate for you, please. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. So coming up on your screen now. We may have had a slight technical issue there. I think there was only really 1 option available in that vote, so I apologise for that. But you can see here that you have to be updating largely process diagrams and, at a minimum, the PDF. So interesting results there. Back to you, please, Nigel.
Yes, I apologise for the mistake in the poll there, because clearly the point I was perhaps looking to make is that when process changes, there's a lot of different stuff to update, and the chances are that you're therefore challenged not only to update it, but to give people a consistent single place to come and find out about the changes. On the previous poll, which I'm not sure if we can easily see again, the point I would make is that these challenges are very interconnected. So, the question I would ask is, if processes are not particularly easy to find or understand, it must be pretty difficult to get a high level of trust that it's up to date, because, if I can't find it, I wouldn't know whether it was up to date, and if I don't understand it easily, I'd absolutely have no confidence that it was up to date. So these things all interconnect. Okay, so let's move on with the presentation. Just a couple of more slides, I think, and then we're on to a demonstration. So what constitutes success? And I apologize for sort of dragging up all the challenges, but let's now have a look at what success looks like. Well, successful process, first and foremost, I think requires knowledgeable people. You know, if you don't have that in place, then the other benefits that you may get from automation and consistency and so on are pretty difficult to achieve. They need people knowing what it is that they're supposed to do. And in the example that we have on the screen, it's also interesting to note that these people are spread across the organization, and it involves people outside of your organization as well, people, you know, like suppliers needing to know what's required of them to make sure that their invoices are paid promptly. So it's poor old accounts payable on the right end of this process that pick up the problems when they have angry suppliers not getting paid on time because you know, something fouled up earlier in the process. However good the automation is, without a purchase order, you're not going to get a first-time match. And you know, the failure to use a purchase order when placing an order is a, you know, a manual mistake made by perhaps buyers or people in end-user departments. So knowledgeable people is a prerequisite, but then if we've got that, the rest can follow. You know, the efficiency of using the right automation, using the right systems, getting things right, the accuracy, which flows through, of course, to good data, the provision of good performance data, management information, and of course happy people ultimately. I said a moment ago that processes are arguably your most important intellectual capital. So if you think about it, process excellence is essentially a knowledge management discipline. For shared service transformation, this knowledge management challenge is really quite grave. People may be leaving the business. Work may be being relocated. So you've got different people, different processes, different systems, all coming together in a kind of perfect storm. And your challenge is to ensure you capture your organization's process knowledge, that you deploy it in a form that's useful and accessible at the time and place that it's needed by the people that need it, so that you can get the value out of the process. So that's, you know, to me what process engagement is all about. So if we move on, 5 rules to get people engaged in process. You know, this is really what Nimbus is all about. As the picture implies, it's about business people owning their process assets, which is why we show them, you know, holding the content and looking proud of it and pleased with their process content. So it's about people taking ownership, being proud of it, caring for it, treating them as assets. So here are the 5 rules for process engagement as I see it. Firstly, processes need to be accessible. And that is, you know, if people cannot find it, then they're not even going to pass go. So, you know, making it easy for people to find the processes that are relevant to their role, relevant to the task that they need to perform is key. But in addition to this, once they find the process content, clearly they have to be able to understand it with an absolute minimum of training. It needs to be easy for them to follow the process step by step to complete required tasks. So that, to my way of thinking, is a prerequisite for engagement. The second golden rule is that processes need to be owned, because someone needs to take responsibility for the design, approval, measurement, and of course improvement of the process. The right people to own a process is the person responsible for the work. And this can be broken down hierarchically. You know, if you look at the, you know, overall responsibility for P2P, of course, rests with the process manager, the P2P process manager. But if you actually decompose that process into its constituent parts, I think there's an opportunity to devolve ownership and devolve responsibility to people lower down in the organization, people that actually do the work. I think that's a recipe for process engagement, this devolved ownership and responsibility. And making that ownership and responsibility transparent for the organization, I think also goes a long way to making people trust that the content is regularly reviewed and up to date, because they recognize the names of the people that you know, they work alongside that are responsible for stuff. Rule number 3 is that processes need to be rich. It's a strange word, but it fits in the box. But what I mean by that is that they're not just easy to follow, but they contain links to all manner of useful information. So links to systems, like it may be links to SAP transactions or Oracle screens, links to work instructions, links to pieces of e-learning. I used the term intellectual capital and knowledge management earlier, and I hope in the demonstration you'll get a sense that the way that we construct our processes and the links that we put into them can actually really benefit this sort of knowledge management challenge, because the process provides the context to make information really easy to access. Rule number 4 is that processes need to be measured. And in business as normal conditions, the real-time KPIs, if you can get to display those performance metrics actually in the context of the process, that becomes a very powerful thing. Instead of performance reporting, it becomes performance management, because people can actually look at things like traffic light indicators, red, amber, green, in the context of the process and ask themselves the question, okay, so this is flashing red, why might that be? They're actually looking at the process, and that combined understanding of the alert that something may be wrong in the context of the process, I think, is very powerful. If we give one place for people to come to understand how things are working, that again can drive process engagement. And the last golden rule is processes need to be improved. And by that, really, I'm focusing on making it easy for the whole workforce to discuss improvement suggestions, to submit ideas, to gain feedback for their suggestion. That's a surefire way to get process engagement. And equally, you need to make it easy for people to understand when content that is relevant to them has changed. So you push alerts out to people so that they know that something has changed, they need to look at it, and perhaps they need to acknowledge that they've seen the change. So the challenge in the next half hour is to bring all of this to life with a quick demonstration. So I think, Susie, you need to pass me control. And you should now be able to see my screen. So I'm going to actually try and take us through a short demonstration, and I'm actually going to start that just by using a few more slides, just to make sure some sort of basic principles are covered, and it will make my demonstration run a little bit more easily for you, because I won't be sort of explaining things for the first time when you see it. So the first thing is this idea of a simple common language that everyone can understand. At Nimbus, we actually advocate the use of a single artifact, a single shape on process diagrams, and we call it the activity box. Now that may be a big surprise to you. Maybe you're expecting all sorts of different shapes and colors to be used. Well, yeah, we can support all of them, but what we've found over the 13, 14 years that we've been doing this is that if you keep it simple, you get a lot more adoption. So the activity box explains what people do. So that's normally in the form of a verb and a noun. The input explains when you do it. The output explains why you need to do it. And then the who is typically the role of the person who's responsible. So we've got some other interesting things going on the screen. There's a paperclip. And the paperclip actually indicates that there are links or attachments to this particular process step. And in the world of sort of shared services, of course, things like links to SAP or Oracle are very common, links to pieces of e-learning to do with using the transaction screens correctly. There may be work instructions and so on. So the richness, the wide variety of links that we can provide here is certainly, I think, a sort of unique benefit of Nimbus Control. So we're giving people access to the systems from the context of the process. Just think in terms of new starters, people coming into your shared service center who need to be inducted. This is a real benefit. And equally, for people out in the business, the customers, you can serve them intuitive, easy to follow processes that contain the links that they need to do the things that you require of them. The next thing on this chart is that we can display performance metrics over any particular activity box or even on a line. We can display real-time performance metrics, and the source of this information is whatever data sources you want to use in your business. So this can show, okay, this particular activity is green at the moment, that means it's above whatever threshold, but on other occasions it may turn a different color. Not limited to traffic light indicators, we can show raw data or percentage fills and so on. So there's the activity box, but of course diagrams are built out of activity boxes. Rather than huge horizontal swim lanes, which you can never fit onto a PC monitor, we advocate simple small diagrams where everything will fit easily at a glance. So typically 6 to 10 or so activity boxes on a diagram. The characteristics of a diagram: every diagram is clearly named. Every diagram has very intuitive navigation. So for example, here we can go to the top level or up one level or back to the previous diagram. And flow line links, which take us to the next diagram where the story continues. Every diagram is governed, so there's an owner, that's a named individual who's responsible for its authorization. There's a version control. We store versions in the database. And it has an authorization status, which is either a diagram can be either a draft version, which is perhaps going through a sort of process redesign, or it is a mastered version. Masters are seen by everyone who has authorization to see it, the wider workforce typically, whereas draft versions are quite locked down and only a few people would be able to look at a draft version, those people who are involved with the redesign. Okay, so I've said that the diagrams are fairly small and lightweight. Clearly we're going to need to make it easy to explode this into more detail. And to do that, we use this thing called the drill down. So to explain drill downs, the drill down symbol, if you click it, will take you to a child of this particular activity, the child diagram, that is. So every particular activity can be exploded in more detail on a subordinate diagram. There's absolutely no limit to the number of drill downs that you have. It's simply a question of fit as much information as you need on a screen to make it easy to follow. Okay, and the demonstration that I'm going to cover is going to try and look at this from a couple of perspectives. Firstly, at the top we've got the customers in the business who need to do things. And that may be, I don't know, to do with HR and recruitment, or it may be to do with procure to pay or what have you, but they're needing to access the services that you provide them. So in this scenario, line manager is going to raise a change request. That's going to get workflowed to the process owner who sits in the shared service organization, who's going to evaluate and assign that to the author, that's me again, who's going to do the editing. And then, of course, it works in reverse so that the change gets approved and notified back to the end user. Okay, so we'll just go back to Nimbus Control and look at the web front end. So you'll see that I'm logged in. I'm logged in as line manager, and so it knows who I am. And my workspace basically gives me a personalized list of my favorite processes, scorecards, documents, measures, and something called storyboards. But also at the top, I've got some to-dos. So I am an owner of various processes, or I am involved in the regular review and approval of content. And so I've got 10 reviews that are waiting for me. So I can click on a review, for example, and say, okay, I need to review these. These may be 6-monthly or 12-monthly automated reviews. And I click on the diagram, and then I can see whether I have any comments to make on it. And I can either click back, or I can click on edit and click on the review item, which is enabled to put in my feedback, and that will be captured by the system. And if I do that, my list of to-dos will obviously go down from 11 to 10. Another thing that I've got is an acknowledgement that's waiting for me. Now, an acknowledgement is something has changed that is relevant to my role, and I need to say that I've seen it and understood it. So let's go and see what that is about. And this is how to recruit a new employee. It's a new storyboard. So let's go and have a look at that. Okay, so this is something that I absolutely love about Nimbus Control. It's the ability to create tutorials through the process content. So what we have is the process diagram, and this is not a copy of it. This is the live and approved process diagram held in the central repository. But we've actually designed a sort of guided tour through the process with step-by-step instructions. So it's just like playing a piece of e-learning. I can look at the diagram, understand that, read the instructions, click Next. It takes me to the next diagram, which is live. It's got links to various attachments, links to perhaps screenshots of the systems that I need to use. It's opened in another window. Just go and close that, read the instructions, and move on. So it's basically walking me through, and of course the training notes in the bottom will explain what it is that's changed or that's new, or we might use speech bubbles, if you like this, to annotate the process. We can hunt and speed up our reading through the process, but ultimately the last step is that I need to acknowledge that I have seen and understood this process change. I'll put in my password and click Acknowledge. I've got passwords turned off just to speed up my demonstration, so not so much turned off, my password is null. Okay, so I've cleared off all my acknowledgements. If I go back to the home page, you'll see that acknowledgements is now 0. There's nothing that I'm expected to know. Okay, so finding processes, so we can navigate through and provide a sort of top-level view of all of our processes and then organize them using drill downs to get to processes that are relevant to a particular role. This is an example of something called an HR accelerator, by the way. And that's a pre-built process content which we provide as part of our consulting engagement with clients. So there's a graphical view here and a sort of structured process view here. So if I want to know about developing employees, I would drill down underneath that. And if I want to know something about appraisal, I'm going to conduct, where are we? Managing line, employee performance. I could drill down there and find out about conducting individual appraisals. Now, so you can navigate manually around the process content, or you can add a diagram to your list of favorites, and then it will appear. I'll click cancel because I've already got it there, I think, in my list of favorites. And then you can have a favorite link to the process there. So one of the things I was promising to show is this sort of engagement, this ability for end users to send feedback and to raise suggestions. So if we navigate into this process diagram and I look at this, let's suppose that I think, do you know what, this is fantastic. There's some links to e-learning material on this process step, conduct appraisal feedback, but I'm really expecting the appraisal document to be available there. So what I can do is decide whether I want to send a message to the author or the owner of this diagram, and that will compose an email including the unique reference to the diagram, and I can send them a message about my thoughts. It may just be a question, or I can enter into a discussion to do with the process content. So the discussion could be, I think we need attachment here, etc. And other people can sort of join in that discussion. So anyone who visits this diagram will be able to see, oh, okay, there's a memo here, there's a discussion, I can reply to that or whatever. Ultimately, if I have a serious concern about this process, I may want to add a change request. So then I would put in a rather more formal information and put in my feedback here, which I'll quickly copy and paste. So I'm sure we have standard appraisal forms, shouldn't they be, on activity box number 2. So what happens to that feedback request is, that change request, is that gets workflowed to the HR director herself, and she will then pick up and review that change request and evaluate it and decide whether to enact it and provide me feedback automatically. Okay, so I'll just very quickly visit a few of the other things we have available in this dashboard. So we've got processes, we've got measures as well. So, measures basically show you process performance actually in the context of the process. So here you can see traffic light indicators saying that, okay, this is fine, but this is red, and we can actually link that to a scorecard. Now this is a very pragmatic approach to scorecarding. We're actually using Excel. We're rendering it through a browser, but of course Excel can take data from any data source in your business. So we can actually see, okay, this is where we're at. Debtors outstanding over 60 days. This is maybe a concern or otherwise. So we're providing sort of a one-stop solution to make it really easy for people to see what it is that they should be doing and how things are actually performing. Right, so there's a few other things to show you in the remaining 15 minutes, and I think what I'd like to do is to actually bring this to life with the case study. Now, at the end of the webinar, you will receive an email from Shared Service Link with access to the video that this is a very quick summary of. And the case study was actually sponsored by Renee Nibelka, who's the person responsible for change and business support at BAE Systems. And this is a story that we captured in January, February this year with BAE Systems. So their goals were to reduce costs, to maintain and improve financial control, and to enable continuous improvement. Those were the goals of their finance transformation program. And in the video, you will hear from Guy Keogh, who is the P2P manager responsible for accounts payable, expenses, time and attendance. And the reason for finance transformation being so important at BAE Systems is clearly the cutback in defense spending. So what they decided to do is they decided to consolidate the number of processing sites that they had in their shared service organization from 5 to 2. And that meant that people were leaving the business, regrettably, but also work was being relocated. What they found is that as they visited these sites, they not only had different processes working at different locations, but they documented those processes in completely different ways. So we have a few examples of them here. So as Guy puts it, we needed a single standard format and we needed a standard process, a single source of the truth. So that's what they did with Nimbus Control. They branded it as something called How To, and it's where we go to understand how to do stuff. So they use things like storyboards and process content and so on, which they created through very quick and fast process workshops, which we facilitated. But that involved the subject matter experts to capture process content very quickly. So everything is now available online, and people can easily suggest a change. So they click on that link, and if they've got a suggestion for improvement, they'll fill it in. They documented 220 control points across 280 process diagrams, and they did that in around about 3 months. Went live inside 6 months. So they have links here from the process to the policy manual, if you like, the financial policies and control points that they need to adhere to. And they can power audit of those controls through Nimbus Control as well. So the process content provides the links that people need to things like SAP screens and to work instructions. And the storyboards provide this intuitive walkthrough, not just for the shared service staff, but to the customers that access the service. They've got 15,000 employees, the expense claim users primarily at this stage, who are accessing these storyboards to understand how to follow the process. And the website where this is all delivered from is receiving 10,000 page hits per month. And I think that proves that their employees are getting engaged with the process. few closing statements from Guy. We documented 280 processes, over 300 work instructions, spanning 6 different ERP systems, and it's all been done extremely quickly. And the feedback from the finance director was that he was very proud of the people that had been involved in this, that they'd really embraced the concept and embraced the change. So I hope that you'll take an opportunity to visit Nimbus TV to actually take a quick look at that case study video, because it will bring to life what people do with Nimbus Control in a way that slides will obviously fall short of. So ways in which we can help you. Well, one of the reasons that the work at BAE Systems was, in their view, very fast was that we were able to bring to the party a number of process accelerators. Process accelerators are pre-built process content, which, because of the hierarchical nature of Nimbus Control, you're likely to find that the top levels, perhaps the top 2 or 3 levels, are fairly generic and applicable to most businesses. Obviously, as you drill down into deeper levels of the process, you're going to find areas that you're going to want to tailor to the specifics of your business. But the great thing about an accelerator is it gives you what we in the UK call a starter for 10. It's a good, ready reckoner, and it really sort of promotes that discussion and gets the ball rolling. And I think that's just really useful. Other examples of where we've accelerated projects like this, Serco HR, they were expecting to take around 13 weeks to capture their HR processes globally, and we did it in 6 weeks. Sony Finance Europe, back in 2011, had, I think, when they started the year, 42 different SAP company codes, and they set out with Nimbus Control to look at standardizing their processes so they could get down to one SAP company code used across the whole of Europe. That's what we helped them achieve. Interestingly, the target for this project was so aggressive in terms of time that I think 3 out of the 5 bidders actually withdrew. So Sony actually went ahead with this on their own, with our help, and I think they reduced their finance costs by around 15% in 2011 and a further 30% expected this year. So you can find out more about the Nimbus Accelerators on our website, or drop me an email after this webinar. You may ask who else is doing this kind of work. Well, the chances are that we work with or perhaps already with your company. I recognize quite a few of the names who have registered for this webinar, so maybe you've heard about this going on in other departments. But the chances are we work with companies very similar to yours. We work in all industry sectors. We have both large and small customers. They're not all sort of famous household names, I can assure you. And one of the reasons that we can scale to the needs and sizes of different businesses is that our software is available as a software as a service. So you can install it on your own kit, but very often customers will start with a hosted solution delivered through the cloud, as we call it, which means you can start very, very quickly without actually installing any servers or software on your infrastructure whatsoever. So Susie, I don't know if I can pass back to you so that we can take some questions and feedback. I think that sort of concludes my presentation at this stage, so thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. So yes, we've got lots of questions coming through, so I'll start putting them through to you. Around the framework, what is the best way to represent the framework given the examples of how not to do it? Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I just was taking a drink of water and put my microphone on mute.
Okay.
So hopefully you can hear me now.
Question? Yeah.
Yes, I did. Yes, yes.
Okay.
My ears went on mute, but my microphone was. So, I mean, the advice that we've got to give is, think of the audience. If you want to influence the behaviour and improve the performance of ordinary people, not just sort of process technologists. You need to keep it simple. And the hierarchical structure that that I showed you, that you can actually start with the strategy, if you like, of the organization as a whole, or of a particular shared service as the top level, and then decompose that from there. Quite a few of the customers have used something called the APQC process classification framework as a means of sort of getting a design, a sort of framework in place. And one of the reasons that framework's important is that tools like that are used as very commonly in benchmarking, where you want to actually know, okay, we're comparing apples with apples, not apples with pears. So yeah, well worth checking out the APQC process classification framework as perhaps a starting point for structuring your processes.
Okay, moving on. Is there a user/administrator forum where Nimbus users can discuss best practices?
Yes, there is. The Nimbus user group, which is, there's an area on our website where you can do that. So if you're already a Nimbus customer, you can gain access to that, and there's a discussion forum. And we also hold fairly regular meetings. Those in the past have been located in the UK, which is where we were founded, but we are actually moving this to an online community as well.
Okay, good. What is the best time to put a solution like this into your operation? Is it at the decentralized stage? Is it at the starting out on shared services stage? Is it at the continuous improvement stage? What's the optimum stage or time that you would need to be in order to really get the most out of this?
Well, I don't know that it's for us to say what suits us best. I mean, the fact of the matter is that customers are where they are, and there is merit in getting your processes clearly documented and into an environment that helps you manage that content, whether you are just starting or whether you're several years in. So if people are fighting with the consequences of process change being, oh gosh, we need to update this document, update this diagram, update these PowerPoints, we need to roll this content out in some way. If you're doing that in all sorts of different ways, the chances are you're frustrating the customers with too much different content presented in different ways, stored in different places. Nimbus Control can help you get control of that, and that's why the product's called what it is. Helps you get control of that so that you can make it a managed process and communicate change to people in a really consistent way.
A final question, please, Nigel, and a relatively brief answer, if you will. A company on the line is initiating processes with their marketing organization. Their question is, how do you get past the mentality of I know better and showcase process in a more inspiring way?
Well, I think it's a matter of engaging the audience. So just as I've advocated that once you've produced this content, it needs to be easy to understand. The thing is that by using a simple common language for process, you don't need to be a highly trained process architect to play a really useful role in the process capture. So that's kind of the #1 rule, really, is think of it's sort of combining this question of the end audience and the ownership of this content. The ownership should be with the people that really understand the process, the people that do the work.
Okay, good. Nigel, thank you very much indeed for that. Lots more questions, but I'm afraid we are well out of time. This is the last webinar that's taking us into our summer break, so we will be meeting you online again in September with our autumn webinar program. In the time being, we invite you to join me and Nimbus and a great lineup of speakers optimizing SAP for end-to-end financial processes. And that's taking place in London in September. And Nimbus is a key sponsor there. And also the Summit for Leaders in Financial Services in Atlanta. Again, Nimbus will be joining us there. So thank you very much for your time and attention. And we look forward to welcoming you next time. Goodbye.